Okay, Peter, so today I wanted to talk about the kind of latest instalment in what we might call celebrity boxing or, curiosity boxing or, older people boxing. We haven't really got a label for it at the moment, like we came out back in the 90s with white collar boxing and, to define a sort of certain area of boxing that was going on. We haven't really got a label for this sort of stuff, but, Triller have got their fight club and we've seen these exhibitions and these curiosities. I suppose it was really kicked off, with Conor McGregor against Floyd Mayweather and seems to be growing all the time now. In reach and the amount of people getting involved in it. And the latest thing that we were going to see was the 9/11 Triller show. The 9/11 Triller's Fight Club show. Now, 9/11 might be a bit of an inauspicious date for many people. It's going to be the 20th anniversary since the Twin Towers fell. But they had this big show, and the chief, attraction on that show was Oscar De La Hoya against Vitor Belfort. Now, Oscar De La Hoya, multi-weight world champion, last fought in 2008. When he got thrashed against Pacquiao, but a very successful promoter. Although we know he's had some personal problems and some substance issue problems. And Vitor Belfort, an active mixed martial artist practitioner, originally from Brazil, now resident in LA. But won UFC 12 heavyweight title. Has a very good mixed martial arts record. Did have a boxing match in 2006, one pro boxing match. So has always dabbled in boxing and is known in the UFC as a big striker. I think he holds the third record, or is the third for the most knockouts in UFC history. So, he's a very competent, very fit guy. He's 44 years old, last fought in 2018, but always in shape. Like I say, Oscar last fought in 2008, but has got himself right back into shape and 46 years old. So they were set to fight on this 9/11 Triller show at the Staples Center in LA. Now, Oscar went down with COVID on Friday, hospitalized with COVID, so he's out. So you thought, well, maybe this show will be scrapped. But Triller immediately stepped in and said, no, Evander Holyfield is going to box Vitor Belfort. So Evander Holyfield has stepped into boxing. And, I just want to look a bit more in detail with this and, recap a bit over what's going to happen. And I must admit, for me, a lot of this stuff I've kind of supported, the Mike Tyson, Roy Jones exhibition, contemporaries boxing each other or boxing each other in exhibitions. I haven't particularly got a problem with, I think these guys know where around the ring. They're both not into getting hurt and all that sort of stuff. Even I am slightly concerned about this. I mean, Holyfield, is a bit of a hero of mine, and he's older than me, and I'm ancient. So, Holyfield is 58 now. He'll be 59 a month after the fight. And I'll recap a little bit about Holyfield to introduce him for anybody that doesn't know. But I mean, obviously, anybody in boxing will know he's a nailed-on Hall of Famer. He's a multiple weight world champ. He's held world titles in the 1980s, 1990s, and 2000s. So he's an incredibly accomplished boxer. But the interesting thing, Peter, is a lot of this this sort of new movement in boxing, whatever you want to call it, these new developments in boxing, are very much said to appeal to the Twitter generation, the YouTube generation. And that's why the charge is being led in a way by people like, by Jake Paul and Logan Paul and so on, who are smashing records in what they're doing, dipping their toe into boxing. So it just does seem a bit of an anomaly to me that you're getting Evander Holyfield at 58 years old to appeal to this young generation of people like my kids who only watch YouTube and are on Twitter and all that sort of stuff. But anyway, Holyfield, was a 1984 bronze medalist at the LA Olympics. He went on to win his first world title after turning professional in 1986. And if anybody that is really into boxing, go back and watch that fight. Evander Holyfield, 15 rounds to win the world cruiserweight title against Dwight Mohammed. Quite absolute classic. And he went on to unify the cruiserweight title, went up to heavyweight in 1988. Won the undisputed heavyweight title from Buster Douglas, who had just beaten Mike Tyson in 1990, and then went on to sort of win, lose, have all the, and he last boxed in 2011. And he held a version of the world heavyweight title 4 times, which is another amazing record. So he's been drafted in, and Holyfield has been making noises for a long time about getting back in the ring and boxing again. He was chasing Mike Tyson when Mike Tyson originally said, I'm going to come back and box. Mike Tyson obviously ended up boxing Roy Jones, or he did an exhibition with Roy Jones. But Holyfield was very keen on that fight because that would be their trilogy, with Holyfield having won the last 2. So, that looked like it was going to happen, but then it kind of fell out. And Holyfield was still chasing that. And then eventually he had signed up with Triller to box Kevin McBride in an 8-round exhibition. And that was set for the 5th of June. And that was going to be chief support to Teofimo Lopez against George Kambosos Jr. But that fight had been put off a couple of times. And interestingly enough, Holyfield was actually suing Triller for $5 million. Because this fight had been put off multiple times. And now Triller have turned around, and that's, bit by the by now, because they've drafted him into this sort of main event attraction. Another interesting thing about this is this was set for the Staples Center in Los Angeles. The California State Athletic Commission have said, no way. is, we're not going to license Evander Holyfield to box. He's 58 years old. It's an accident waiting to happen. So the ever resourceful Triller have decided to move the show to Florida. So they moved the show to Florida, where pretty much anyone can get a license. So the show is going ahead. It's happening. I mean, on the support, you've got Tito Ortiz against Anderson Silva, 2 UFC legends. You've got this curiosity fight again, David Haye, the coming back ex-heavyweight champion David Haye, against his pal, the billionaire Joe Fournier. You've got Andy Venezis against John Joe Carroll. Now, those are good. Those are good guys. Andy Venezis is 23-2. John Joe Carroll is 19-2. That's a good super featherweight bout. And so, interestingly enough, Triller seems to be going down and copying what Showtime are doing in a way, which is blending this curiosity boxing, as I'm going to call it, in with decent boxing. So, that is interesting. But yeah, Evander Holyfield boxing, I'm not really sure how I feel about it. Well, I'm concerned. I'm a bit concerned. I mean, you have to look back in boxing history, and there have been precedents for this. I mean, the great Jack Johnson, heavyweight champ 1908 to 1919, his last ring appearance was in 1946 at the age of 67 when he boxed 3 one-minute rounds with Joe Janay. But again, I would say Joe Janay was a contemporary of Jack Johnson, and so they were both old men, both knew what they were doing in the ring, a bit like, I would say Tyson and Jones. They knew their way around, they knew what they were doing, and they knew how not to get hurt. Holyfield going against Vitor Belfort. I mean, Vitor Belfort is a bit of an unknown quantity in a boxing ring. He's going to do some strange things. Holyfield should be able to easily deal with him in the sense that it's a boxing match. But, how far his reactions are shot, how far his timing is shot, and, the problems of getting those big punches, because, I mean, this guy can hit, this guy can really punch. And at 44, he won't be that far off his peak. Won't be able to compete with the younger guys, but he won't be that far off. And I think there's a big decline between 44 and 58. So, and also, it's not an exhibition. In a way, I haven't got a problem with exhibitions between two sensible and competent people. But this is not being billed as an exhibition. It's being billed as an 2-minute fight, a 2-minute round fight with a referee's decision. So, we're going to have to see how it goes. I'm probably going to watch. I hate to say it because I'm curious, but I've got to tell you, I'm going to be watching, between my fingers. And I just hope and pray that nothing happens to the great Evander Holyfield. But there you go. That's the latest Triller show. The 9/11 Triller show. Again, I hope it's not an inauspicious day. But Evander Holyfield steps in to replace Oscar De La Hoya and box Vitor Belfort on this show. And, we shall see what happens. I mean, there is obviously part of me that says, being 51 myself, I hope it'd be great if he could roll the clock back, as we've seen George Foreman do, as we've seen various other fighters from Archie Moore do, and prove that you can do things at an advanced age. But I just do think there's got to be a point when you've got to say it is no longer any good to get hit in the head. And I think, Evander Holyfield has probably passed that point. But there we go. It's on 9/11 on the Triller, and we'll see what happens. Thanks, Peter.